Hello, everyone. Happy Saturday. It's me, Dr. Cindy, your Johns Hopkins and Yale trained, board certified OBGYN, reproductive endocrine infertility specialist and virologist. And I'm here today with a special show. We're actually simulcasting. So we're going live on IG, but also we're going live across Facebook and YouTube and LinkedIn and Twitter because we can, right? But we're here with a special live today. I will be joined by a very, very special guest, and it's a reunion of sorts for me and this amazing guest, Azia Milford. Azia has an incredible story to share, and we're going to dive deep into her story and her journey, which has been incredible. So why are we doing this live today? Well, guys, we're actually celebrating 5 years of Nevada Fertility Institute. So I am the medical director, founding physician of the Nevada Fertility Institute, which is a full service reproductive health facility located here in Las Vegas, Nevada. And yesterday, November 12th, was year 5, the 5th year to the day of launching the clinic here in Las Vegas back in November of 2016. And along the way, I have met incredible people, incredible patients, incredible stories have been shared. And one of them is actually Azia's story that we're going to delve into today. The theme for today's conversation is egg freezing for the cancer patient. So that's a hint as to Azia's journey. And Azia is an incredible person to share her story. I already see comments coming in from across the networks here from LinkedIn. Alicia Dill says, "Our Thanksgiving miracle retrieval." Indeed, Azia, you guys will hear about our Thanksgiving retrieval. Indeed, we retrieved Azia's eggs, one of her retrievals, on Thanksgiving Day back in 2017. So we have so much to share, but without further ado, I'm going to welcome Azia to both our feed here on Instagram as well as on Facebook. So first we'll bring Azia into the feed across the networks.
Hi.
As well. Good morning, Azia. Yes,
good
guys,
morning.
Here in Vegas, it's so morning. How are you? It's so nice to see you.
I'm good. How are you? It's so good to see you.
I am doing well. And oh my God, it's always a joy to see you. I just love your face. I love seeing your energy. And of course, you know, I'm a fangirl of yours on Instagram. I'm constantly following you. I'm looking to invite you to the Instagram. Are you on the live yet on Instagram?
Let me see. So it wouldn't let me do both. Unfortunately, It was not. You know, technology.
So guys, you're on Instagram. Come on over to our YouTube feed, our Facebook feed, or Twitter feed, and you'll see me and Azia live right now. We're also on LinkedIn. Just find any of my accounts, and you can view the interview. But we're over here. We won't stay here then. So I'll keep it running so you can hear the conversation. And if you're so inclined, come on over, and you can see Azia's amazingly gorgeous face and hear her discussion. And of course, you can hear the audio too. So Azia, welcome. Happy Saturday. How's your week been and how's your day going so far?
It has been great. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much. I'm so excited to see you. Like you said, it's definitely a reunion. It's been almost 4 years. But my week has been good. It has been busy, and it's the holiday season, so things are a little crazy, but it's been so much fun, and this has definitely been the highlight of my week. So yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. You know, I've been following your career, your journey into becoming this boss esthetician and watching your amazing work. And so it's just incredible to have you here. Alicia, who you know, is one of our nurses who has now moved on to greener, bigger pastures, but still stays very engaged. And Alicia has written 5 years. It feels like yesterday. Indeed, Alicia was there with me at the start, from the very start. There for our ribbon cutting. Can you believe it, Alicia? 5 years.
It's crazy that time has flown by so fast.
It is. So Azia, let's talk a little bit about your story. I gave a little preview there in that you and I met as you were embarking on a journey for egg freezing following a very surprising diagnosis of ovarian cancer. How old were you at that time so that people can get an appreciation for this story here?
So I was 21. I had just turned 21, like 2 months before I had been diagnosed with ovarian cancer. Kind of like my journey started is I went to go get like my yearly check for my Mirena placement. And I'd kind of had some suspicions that maybe it had fallen out of place. And so I was like, okay, let me just go in, let's get checked. So we did the ultrasound, and, ultrasounds usually take like 15, 20 minutes, max. And it kept going a little longer and a little longer. And there was a few more doctors who came in to look at the screen. And I was like, is everything okay? Like, it's been an hour at this point. And so they just said, okay, we're going to have the radiologist call you. They need to talk to you about your scans, and because, you're with the ultrasound tech, they can't tell you exactly what's going on. And so I called my husband and I was like, so I don't know what happened, but we're going to get a call. So they were so gracious, and they called me literally before I left the parking lot, and they're like, can you come in the morning? And that's when they told me that they had found a tumor on my right ovary. So that was like the beginning.
Wow. What was that like for you? Because there you were, 21 years old, a young wife, just starting out your life as a married couple, starting to build a life together. And suddenly here you are hearing that your routine ultrasound found a tumor.
Yeah. So we were also in our first year of marriage. So we hadn't even hit the first year yet. So, they always say, your first year of marriage is the craziest. And I can testify 1,000% it was the craziest year of my life. Yes. But it was crazy. So we went in, they were super efficient. I got in surgery literally later that week. They got in, they did the biopsies. And they were able to tell me that the tumor, because of everything, it was for sure a tumor and what they would call like a stage 3. And so they're like, we need to make sure we get your ovary removed. And at the time, being 21, when you're young, we go on Google and we Google everything. And I just remember seeing all these pictures of people who have ovarian cancer, and they were much older than I was. Yeah. And I was very confused. And so it's funny because when people talk about ovarian cancer, they kind of go into that, oh, like you're so young. Like it was a lot of questions that I got at the beginning. And so it was a lot about having an amazing support team with you guys and my oncologist and, explaining that, yes, it does usually happen with older women, but it can happen at any age. So just being in my first year of marriage and the craziness that is marriage, and then mixing that in with what does this new path look like for us was a whole nother ballgame. And so from going from there and knowing that I was going to have to get this ovary removed, that's when my oncologist had recommended you, which love her to this day for that. Dr. Fleury here in Vegas. She's amazing.
Amy Fleury, a GYN oncologist.
Yes, she is incredible. And she was like, you need to go see Dr. Cindy Duke, and you need to think about your fertility options. And at the time, being in your first year of marriage, I was like, we hadn't even thought about kids for a few years. And, like we had previously kind of talked about, is having to make that decision now. Is that something that I wanted to do?
And I remember meeting you and being struck by how grounded you were at that visit, because certainly I had gone through all the records. I'd been looking at everything that Dr. Fleury had written, and Dr. Fleury is an amazing GYN oncologist who, full disclosure, she and I knew each other because we had trained together at Johns Hopkins. I was a resident and she was the GYN oncology fellow on service. So we go years. We go back over 10 years at this point. Oh my goodness, about 14 years now. And she had reached out and she texted me and she said, I have a 21-year-old with ovarian cancer. I was like, ovarian cancer in a 21-year-old? Does she have the cancer gene? And she said, we're testing, but it doesn't look like she does. This is really just sort of one of those incidental findings. And now she's stage 3. And I wanted to come talk to you because I'm pretty sure we have to take one ovary. We may need to take the second ovary, but more importantly, she may also need chemotherapy depending on margins. And so I want to make sure she's plugged in with you. And so you
Yes.
came and you showed up with your husband, which I think it's always great to show up with a support system when you
Mhm.
come in for these consultations. But it was clear you'd already done some of your research. I could tell. So
Yeah.
you saying now that you had gone on Google doesn't surprise me. Because I could tell then that you had
Mhm.
gone to see, and of course it was quick, so Dr. Fleury texted me, and then we reached out to you because we try to get our cancer patients into the office within 48 hours of
Yes.
receiving the referral. And it's for a number of reasons. It's so we can have an understanding of what your thoughts are, but also to share our knowledge about the field and about what we call oncofertility, which is the subspecialty that is preserving fertility in patients with a known or suspected cancer diagnosis. And then discovering when we talked, and you guys were like, we weren't planning to have children right now, but definitely kids were in our future. So, what
Mhm.
was that day like for you? That's preparing to come to a fertility clinic, preparing to realize that you have to talk about having children today as opposed
Mhm.
to on your terms and on your schedule.
Yeah, so I remember I was at work, and at the time I worked at a school, me and my husband were at school, and obviously I had all my coworkers who knew at this point, not necessarily all the details, but kind of like, the
Mhm.
general things that I was going through. And they're like, what are you going to do? And I just remember there was all these questions. And because I had done Google, but then also there was still so many questions I had myself. I was like writing down all these questions that people had asked me. I was like, oh, that's a good one. I should probably think about that. Or people who had
Mhm.
kids, were like, okay, you want to think about this and this. And so it was very nice. But I just remember being so nervous, like driving over. And I was asking Aaron, my husband, and I was like, how many kids do we want? Like, we had, briefly talked about those things and had this idea, but now because the possibilities were smaller than what we thought it was going to be. We're like, are we okay
Yeah.
with just one? Like, if we only get one egg, like, are we okay with that? Or, is this something we want to do? And so it was a lot of questions, but also a lot of silence in the car. And just entering into, Nevada Fertility Institute and just immediately feeling calm. And I was like, okay, it's going to be okay. Everybody was so welcoming. Like, it's so funny because when I talk about you, like, I always tell people, she's like part of the family. Like, I message her
Yes.
once a week, like,
And we
hey,
feel
how's it
that way.
doing?
We feel that way.
Exactly. And I think that's such a huge part of it is finding, a doctor that you resonate with and you feel taken care of. Because even just going into the room and waiting for you, to come in, everybody, like the entire team was very welcoming and everybody already knew kind of why I was there and
Yes.
some of my background so that they understood that it was delicate because at the point that I saw you, I think I had only had my diagnosis for maybe like a month.
Yes.
And so everything was still very new and emotionally I was a little all over the place, which, is
Mhm.
understandable
It's
with those things.
understandable.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of unknowns. So, because
Yeah.
again, you didn't start off with a cancer doctor. You started off going in to get your Mirena IUD checked out.
Yeah.
Suddenly, you're being sent for an ultrasound, and at the radiologist, they're thinking, this is weird. So then your gynecologist goes in because they're still thinking this is unlikely a cancer. It can't be a
Yes.
cancer. He's too young. And so your gynecologist does their surgery, and indeed, that final pathology comes back and says,
Mhm.
oh, this is no cyst. This is
Yeah.
indeed a cancer. It's a stage 3 ovarian tumor and it's
Mhm.
cancer. And then you go see Dr. Fleury,
Yeah.
and there she's saying, not only do we have to take some steps like removing your ovary, but this
Mhm.
could affect your future fertility, and you need to have some answers today.
Yeah. Like there was no room for the guessing game. Just kind of like, let's wait and see what happens.
Yeah.
Which super grateful. But yeah, as soon as going in and sitting down and kind of looking at the numbers and knowing that I was going to have to get a blood test to see what exactly my fertility was even at, that was like a thing that I had no clue about. Like I was like, you can
Mhm.
like draw blood and figure out how many eggs I have. Like that's
Yes,
crazy.
yes. I remember that. And I remember your husband saying, wow, this is like space age stuff.
Yes.
And I love that you segued to that, because we did that test, and then lo and behold, more surprises. Because not only did we discover that, okay, here we have a 21-year-old with ovarian cancer facing removal of at least one ovary, but we discover your ovarian reserve was really low, really low. And so whether or not a cancer diagnosis had happened, you were working with a very small pool of eggs to begin with, which was almost like, so if this tumor didn't happen, when would you know?
Exactly. And I distinctly remember sitting on the exam table and you coming in and we were talking about my numbers. And I remember the thing that always stuck out was like, it's similar to someone who was like premenopausal numbers. And I was like, what? Like, I'm 21. Like, I have a massive family. I have 62 first cousins. Like, infertility was just like not a thing that I thought about. I was like, oh, I'm going to snap my fingers and I can have a baby. Like, there's just no question about it. And so with that kind of test, I remember thinking like, why don't we do this kind of blood test when we get our first pap smear? Like, why is that not a thing? Because without my tumor, who knows if I would have struggled for a long time and just thought, never thought to go see, someone for fertility.
Yeah. And I think that was what struck me too. The experience with you was part of what really framed my own advocacy in recognizing that we do need to go out there and explain to people that, there's something called an ovarian reserve. The fact that as we age, our egg numbers do change, but that for some of us, for unexplained reasons, we start out with lower numbers of eggs, even when our families seem to have people who can birth innumerable numbers of babies. And I also remember us having the conversation at the time, which was to highlight that age was actually on your side here. So even though you were working with a small pool of eggs, being 21 meant your eggs were 21 years old. And so in so much as the total number of eggs was looking like what we would see in a perimenopausal person, because we're not exaggerating here, the numbers were low and have remained low, but the age of the egg is the biggest predictor for success. And you were working with 21-year-old eggs. And so we recognize that even if we got 1 to 4 eggs at a time, we were going to be working with a much better outlook than what you would see otherwise. So we then talk about harvesting eggs and the process and the cost.
Yes, the cost.
What was that like? Of course, we also had lots of options and we worked with Live Strong, so we'll jump into that too. But what was that like for you guys? Again, 21 years old, newly married, less than a year, both starting your jobs, working at a school. Everybody knows schools aren't out there paying the big bucks, right?
Unfortunately.
And suddenly here you are with this, not just, oh my gosh, I have a cancer, but I need to figure out ways to preserve my fertility for 2 reasons. One is I might lose both of my ovaries early, or I may need chemotherapy that could damage whatever eggs are remaining. And then lo and behold, I have low egg number. Wow.
Yeah.
And so what was that like for you and for your husband, and just that process of all that news there?
Yeah. So during that time, like when we got kind of hit with like that double whammy of that low egg count number, I just remember my husband and I always said during that year, at least once a day, we'd be like, when it rains, it pours, because everything that could happen was just like happening. And not only were we confused, but, physicians, like we're like, oh my gosh, like you're 21, like this is kind of like the perfect storm in a way. And I just remember sitting down with a financial advisor and seeing the numbers, and I had the biggest knot in my stomach, and I was like, there's no way. There's just no way to pay for this. And then being introduced to Live Strong and figuring out those ways for oncology patients to get money to help fund these things. And I had no idea that kind of thing even existed. And I remember talking to friends and family about it after the appointment, and they're like, oh my gosh, like why don't more people know about these things? Because when you're in that fight of thinking, okay, if I'm going to have to go through chemo, like that is a fight for my life, and I want to make sure that that's my focus, and finances are just on top of all of that. And why don't more people know about it, so that one thing is taken off the tree of things to worry about during that time. But seeing the numbers, I mean, as you know, during that time, my husband sold his truck so that we could pay for some of it. And I remember going to the dealership and bawling my eyes out and be like, I'm so sorry. Like, this is your baby. You know, this is the truck that you first got when you were able to finally drive. And my husband's an angel, and he was just like, it's fine. Like, if this baby is going to pay for our new baby, you know, and I'm so grateful for him. But yeah, it's a scary thing to think that you're going to have to drop $20,000, $30,000 to possibly have a baby or possibly get an egg. Because I felt like when I talked to a lot of friends or family, or most people like who aren't aware of IVF and those type of things and egg freezing, they're like, oh, you just go in, you take a couple meds, they extract the eggs, bam, bam, boom, like you're done. It's guaranteed. And it's not.
It's not. It's absolutely not. And, you know, what we're talking about here is a timeline of days, not even weeks. You guys were having to make pretty big decisions about selling his truck, figuring out finances, all that within a span of a couple weeks at first. And then you went ahead and had your surgery, which is you had the ovary removed. And we embarked on our egg retrieval journey. And yes, I know I had prepared you saying, looking at your egg number testing and our ultrasounds, there aren't that many eggs there. And so we may need multiple cycles. But did you believe that at the time, that you really might end up needing multiple cycles to get enough eggs?
I hoped, because of the, you know, my family being so fruitful, I was like, no, I think just one. Like, I think I'm going to take all the meds. I'm going to be so good. I'm going to follow everything to a T. That I was like, oh, we're going to do one. It's going to be great. And I ended up having to go through 3 all within like a month and a half. Like, I just remember that being the craziest month and a half of my life.
It was.
And between the adjustments with medications, and people don't realize, like, I went every single day to go get my.
Yes. Uh-oh, she froze there. But what she's sharing is that she would come in to pick up her medications because we had arranged with Livestrong. So Livestrong Foundation, this is one of the positive stories that came out of Lance Armstrong, the cyclist, right? Lance Armstrong himself was diagnosed with testicular cancer. And along the course of his own journey, discovered that many young reproductive age people, when faced with a cancer diagnosis, don't have resources to actually seek out fertility preservation services, especially those with ovaries, wherein medications, hormonal medicines that cost in the thousands are needed. And again, as you're hearing with Asia here, we're literally talking about making decisions and coming up with finances in the span of a week, sometimes 2 weeks for most patients facing a cancer diagnosis, needing to treat their cancer, but also deciding if to pursue egg freezing or embryo banking. And so Livestrong was started by Lance Armstrong, has since gone on to become an independent organization. But what they do, if a clinic is partnered with them, is they will provide the medications, all of those medications, at no charge to the patient. And so that immediately removes thousands of dollars in expense for medications, because make no mistake, one of the biggest expenses in any sort of fertility or fertility preservation journey is the cost of those medications. And so especially for Asia, who ended up doing 3 rounds, that is potentially where she would have had to spend somewhere in the order of, because of her egg numbers too, in the order of about $6,000 per cycle just for medicines. And also, as part of partnering with Livestrong, as a clinic, we agree to waive the physician's fees. So really the only services you pay for are the lab services, but as a physician, I waived all my fees. And so whereas an egg freezing cycle, in terms of what you pay a clinic, can easily be somewhere around $8,000, with Livestrong, we're able to cut that in half. for egg freezing. And so Asia, again, you guys it was just so impressive watching you and your husband, young couple, recently married, navigating this. But also I watched as you started integrating your family, because you're the eldest, right, of your
Yes.
mom's kids. And so here you are, 21-year-old big sister, but also having to say, hey, I have cancer, but also your mom watching her baby with something that she would have thought would be more something you see in older relatives. So what was that like for you, breaking this news to the family, breaking the news to your parents, your extended family, but your siblings who are younger?
Yes. So I think the most heartbreaking part was breaking the news to my mom. Just naturally because she's my mom, but also because she also lost both of her parents to cancer. And so immediately my grandmother died of breast cancer. And, it was just crazy because we had talked growing up, like, it's so crazy, out of everybody in our family, because both of our, maternal grandparents had passed away of cancer, that nobody has gotten a diagnosis. And lo and behold, it was me. And so talking to her about it, and her just being so strong and being like, it's going to be okay. Any appointments that you need me to go to. Even my sister at the time, she was still in high school, or just barely in high school, and her kind of not really understanding all of the interworkings of it. And even just explaining to her what an ovary was, because I mean, in middle school, I had no idea what an ovary was.
No, we don't talk about these things in that kind of detail. The most we tell people is don't have sexual relations, and we leave it there. And so, tell us more about that interaction with your sister.
Yeah. So with my sister, it was just trying to get her to understand, one, the severity of it. And not only that, but trying to help her understand her own, female health, because I wanted, because I had it, I was like, I want to make sure that you are keeping an eye on certain things and going over, like, what are the typical symptoms of having ovarian cancer. Because for me, now that I can look back at that time, I'm like, oh yeah, there was definitely some signs, but I thought I just had, a bad period. Like, I was just like, I'm just one of the people who, are unlucky and just have awful cramps. And I mean, cramps that I would go into like full body shakes, white completely, could not move. Like, Aaron had multiple times had to like remove me from restaurants because all of a sudden I would have like these cramp attacks, is what I would call them. And trying to help her understand, if these things are happening to you, you need to go get them checked. Because I was grateful that I was getting checked for Mirena, but I have no idea, if I never had that, how long that would have been there. And I just didn't know.
Yes. And we have someone that here saying, hi, Asia.
Yes, it is my sister-in-law. She's amazing. Yes.
Welcome, welcome. And guys, feel free to put your questions for Asia and me in the comments, no matter what platform you're on. I see people commenting from LinkedIn, from Facebook, from YouTube. Welcome, guys. Welcome, everyone. I also see people commenting over here on Instagram. So we appreciate you guys staying on Instagram, even though it's just me, but I know you can hear the audio. So you're hearing me interview Asia. And of course, feel free to come across to YouTube, my channel there, or to Facebook, to LinkedIn, and you can actually follow and see Asia live. But definitely feel free to not only put your comments as you are, but your questions for Asia, because I'm going to try to be as thorough with her, but I'm sure there's going to be an angle that someone in the audience thought of with a question that I wouldn't have covered. And so I love that you did that, Asia, because one of the things I encounter a lot with our younger patients, and we have had patients as young as 16 who we've had to freeze eggs for here at Nevada Fertility Institute. And Alicia, who's on the line there, can attest to that, because Alicia and Michelle were very much involved in getting those Livestrong things done and the certifications done in a very fast turnaround so we can get the patients going, but also recognizing that you're still very much in your own transitional stage in life. And now you're being faced with this essential existential question about your future, your survivorship. But I'd like to know from your personal experience, What was it like hearing that you could do things to preserve eggs, et cetera, in terms of your outlook about your diagnosis? You know, there are a number of studies out there that have actually said it's really, really helpful to a patient's outlook on their prognosis and their survival of their cancer if people bring up the idea of preserving your fertility. In surveys done, for example, by the Cleveland Clinic, they surveyed patients who'd been diagnosed with a cancer in their childhood or their teen years. Mm-hmm. And they all said that it was really helpful when someone brought up future fertility because it suggested they believed in their survival and they believed they'll be around long enough. And in those studies, they also found that the patients who didn't receive that counseling, also 78% of them said they wish they had received the counseling because they would have opted for it. And so Dr. Fleury being very forward thinking, because the truth is other doctors might not have said any of that. They would have just said, this is a cancer, we're in a fight for your life, we just need to go and go quickly. What did that mean to you, hearing people talk about a future and children? What did that mean to you and your husband?
It gave us a legacy to look forward to, because being so young, you know, you think about the white picket fence, the house, all those things that are so, you know, in the future, that when we got my diagnosis originally, everything changed. I mean, going from, okay, it was a cyst and then testing it and it going to stage 3 cancer. I mean, going into my surgery, I was like, okay, the worst is it could be, I don't know, stage 1, stage 2. I totally had no grasp on how serious it could be. And I remember getting like the measurement when they were saying, oh, it's like 4 centimeters for the tumor. And I was like, okay, like thinking about a ruler and being like, oh, it's so small. But then you think about the comparison to the size of an ovary and how big that really is. And having, like you said, Dr. Fleury thought ahead to mention something, because you know, she monitored my ovary so closely between you two to be able to keep that ovary there until I was, you know, able to get through all my rounds. And so just having that knowledge that I could possibly have a future with kids, and, you know, that my life didn't end at my diagnosis. And I feel like that is what's painted a lot sometimes in media, where it just shows the, you know, the diagnosis, and then all of a sudden they go through all this turmoil and heartbreak, and you know, my journey was full of that. But to have that light at the end of the tunnel after my surgeries, it was kind of like, okay, well, after I get through my cancer treatment, I can start thinking about a baby, and you know, even if it has to be surrogacy, but it's still biologically, I could see my legacy, you know, one day.
Yes, which I think is so important. And I remember that conversation. I think it was your husband who asked me, is she going to lose her uterus? And I shared that I didn't think so. Based on what Dr. Fleury told me, I didn't think so, but that if radiation or something ever became necessary, then that could potentially compromise the uterus if you had to have radiation to the pelvis. And so I remember you guys saying that, you know, you're going to hope for the best, pray for the best, and just take it at a time and prepare for the worst. And again, I remember thinking, they're so mature. I love this, because I wasn't sure how I would cope at 21 with all of that coming at me so fast. But you did so incredibly well. And indeed, we ended up doing 3 retrieval cycles, including a retrieval on Thanksgiving Day.
Yes. Thanksgiving has, go ahead.
And I said in 2017, Thanksgiving.
Yes. So Thanksgiving has become a whole new thing for my family. So the first round, you know, we were able to collect quite a few eggs, but unfortunately we tried to do the embryo freezing and it didn't take. So that's why we ended up going through with the second round and retrieving on Thanksgiving Day. And I remember Aaron just joking with me and be like, well, at least you can lay on the couch and eat the rest of the day. And I was like, well, that's true. But I remember when I started taking the meds the first time, it, like, you know, you can kind of prepare people and say, hey, this is how you're going to feel. This is how, you know, you may gain weight, all these different things. And I was like, okay, yeah, you know, for sure. Like sometimes it'll feel like a really strong period cramps, but I had no idea the feeling. Like I go back and I remember your analogy. You were like, it's going to feel like there's a bunch of grapes hanging in your back and they're super heavy.
Yes.
And I realize in my body that I don't have my other ovary. And so sometimes, when I am ovulating, like I'll feel that bunch of grapes only on one side. And so
Yes.
I'm like, yeah, she's 100% right.
Yes. Yes. And that's one of the things is having to figure out ways to communicate what things might feel like, et cetera, to a patient and what to look forward to. But you're also right in that we can never truly forecast what the experience would be like for you.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things we do for a patient with a cancer diagnosis, especially one that's a hormonal cancer, like in your case, it's a cancer in the ovary, which means it's something that could be potentially very sensitive to estrogen, is being careful as we stimulate you not to cause your estrogen to rise. So it meant we also put you on medicines to keep your estrogen levels low, which then has its own mood related symptoms and sleep disturbance and all that stuff. What was that like for you?
It was definitely tough. I feel like as I went through different rounds, I got better at it because I understood more. But that first round, when I say it was a test of my marriage, it was a test of my marriage, because the emotional roller coaster that I was on, not only that, but not sleeping, and even just not sleeping from anxiety of, what the next day held. I mean, I had at least 5 or 6 doctor's appointments every week. And
Yes.
with every doctor's appointment, whether it was with you or Dr. Fleury, I just never knew what, they were going to say. And especially with Dr. Fleury and you guys always said you're kind of like a gray case. Like there's no white and black because you are so young and there's just so many different circumstances with you that we just kind of have to take it day by day and adjust as we will. And that's why it was so important, like you said, with a hormonal cancer, those levels when they drop or rise, the tumor can expand or, feed off of that essentially. And so that's why it was so important to monitor so closely. But yeah, the effects that happened, even for my husband, I remember him saying it was so hard to watch you take your shots every day because he would just see this lineup of syringe after syringe after syringe. And he was like, are you sure you need all this? And I'm like, yeah, like this is what it's going to take to, to make this baby, happen.
Yeah. And we were also working with a timeline, which is your surgery was planned, I think, for December 22nd, a few days before the Christmas holidays.
And then we moved it to December 15th, and that even crunched our window.
Moved it up a week. That's what I remember. And so it was like, oh my goodness, we've got to get this going. So yes, indeed, that first cycle, we had eggs, we had great fertilization, but no embryos developed in terms of getting to the stage where we could freeze them, in terms of getting blastocysts. So, okay, yes, we had prepared you for potentially multiple cycles, but here's cycle number 1 with no outcome, meaning no embryos, no eggs. And you'd gone through all this. Hubby had sold his truck, and now we're facing the second one. I think your mom came in to hear about the plan, the second one. She wanted to know, which I thought was really sweet. She kept saying, I trust you, doctor. It's not that I don't trust you. It's just she already did one and nothing came of it. I'd like to hear more about what's going on. But I also imagine it was because you probably had to recruit family for some of that financial need as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So after our first round and hearing that the possible chemotherapy plan that was going to be put in place, we had just moved into our first apartment a couple months before my diagnosis. And we actually ended up having to move out and move back in with my mom just to be able to finance fertility and, medication for oncology and my surgeries that were coming up. And because all of this happened, I mean, from start to finish, as far as like my oncology part was September to February. And so all this money in one little time crunch was crazy. And so my mom was like, do you think it's okay if I just come and sit? And I'm like, yes, like she'll explain it to you. I'm like, don't ask me. I'm not so great with like the science behind it. I was like, but I know it's going to be okay. And so we had gone in. She actually also brought me to my egg retrieval, the second one on Thanksgiving morning. And Erin was like, yeah, I went back with her the first time. You can go back with her this time. And I think that retrieval will forever be like ingrained in my mind because I remember you coming to me and that was the time that we got nothing.
Yes.
And I just remember bawling And I remember you holding my hand, and you cried and my mom cried, because the amount of work and love and time and sacrifice that had gone into getting me to that even second point was even more than the first time, because we knew, okay, we were only going to freeze eggs. We weren't going to do embryos just based on their first round. Definitely changed my outlook on what was possible.
And, that was hard. I mean, I think, because again, we discovered that the egg number is so low, like shockingly low. And without divulging too much, we also discovered some sperm factors. And so we're sitting there and we're like, oh my gosh. And we've got a time crunch, which was, we thought we were December 22nd. And then Dr. Fleury says, no, we got to go December 15th. We can't wait an extra week on her. And so here we are with the second, and still not an outcome that we love. And so now we're talking about a third, and literally the speed at which we need to go into a third, which was essentially back to back, just roll right into the third. And I remember saying to you that I would understand if you didn't want to. I remember looking at your mom, and your mom said, why wouldn't she want to? I remember that, and I was like, wow, this is incredible. And, but what I love watching, and I've seen it with a lot of, particularly our younger patients who have a cancer diagnosis, is the importance of family and the importance of family being part of that support system and the understanding of the meaning of what you're going through and what it means for today, but also the future. And I'm saying this because I know there are healthcare professionals on the line right now listening to us on various channels. And unfortunately, for a lot of us in healthcare, there's this inherent unfortunate need to say, I don't know that the patient can afford the service. I don't know that they are prepared for this. Oh, this is such a heavy piece of responsibility to ask them to consider their future fertility. But the data actually says that, one, we should, but not only that, the American Society of Clinical Oncology, the American Society of Reproductive Medicine, the American College of Pediatrics at this point all recommend that in a reproductive age patient, particularly those with ovaries, because we actually are surprisingly doing better at telling those with testicles about preserving their fertility when they're faced with a cancer diagnosis. But we're still not doing a great job in telling those with ovaries, especially those who are preteen, teens, and up to age 42, about the impact that their surgery, whether it be a removal of the ovary or chemotherapy or radiation, may have on their future fertility. And many of us, based on data that we collected, for example, there was a study we did out of Yale screening for awareness of fertility preservation options amongst healthcare professionals. And what we found was, it was actually what was thought to be an altruistic thought. Many healthcare professionals thought they were doing the patient a favor by not bringing up the idea of their future fertility. They thought they were going to be stressing out a patient about something that was so far in the future. They're in a fight for their lives. This is not a necessary thing to stress them out with, but in fact, it's necessary and it's helpful. And families come together and make some amazing decisions to support that decision many times. I've seen churches do fundraisers. I've seen family members do family fundraising amongst themselves. I've seen grandparents who are very invested in the idea of their grandchild being able to have a future biological child, invest in that as well. And so that was something I was certainly impressed by. And I know Alicia, who's here, who was RN at the time, the RN working directly with you, experienced that with you.
Yes. And especially so when I was working at the school, you talked about fundraisers. So I feel everybody knows that the week before Christmas break is a spirit week. So they do like dress up, pajama day and, crazy hair day or whatever.
Yes.
And the student council teacher secretly operated this whole thing where I had no idea, but all the donations, so the kids had to pay $1 in order to participate. And they ended up putting that all into a GoFundMe for me to be able to pay for treatment. And they did Ovarian Cancer Awareness Week instead of Spirit Week, and they sold buttons, and the kids had these, amazing Teal Strong buttons that they wore every day. And it was incredible. Like you say, it's worth giving the patient an option because yes, was it stressful to have to worry about fertility and oncology? Yes. But one was almost a light while the other, I had to constantly remind myself, like, it's going to be okay. There's going to be a future. And that's what fertility was for me. It was that silver lining. And I would have never known the depth of my community until this happened. And I had kids that were, writing notes to me, and I would read them. And, I remember coming to you guys and telling you like all these wristbands that they'd given for me to give you guys, and so that you could participate in their Spirit Week. And, my mom taking us in, all these things. My in-laws were amazing. They always checked on us, drove us to appointments, hospital visits, all of it. And this was such a devastating time for my family, but it was also such an amazing time because all of us are so close-knit now because we had to physically, financially, and emotionally lean on each other because that's all we had at the end of the day.
And, it's just not something you can ever plan for. Like, there's no way in August of that year, you knew that come September, your IUD check was going to present a series of events that would change who you are, but also frame the incredible woman you are today. So we're going to jump ahead a little bit, right? So we do these three. The third one is actually reasonably successful. We get eggs, we freeze in the nick of time. I think it was just days before your surgery.
It was a day and a half. Yes.
In the nick of time. And we got what we were looking for. And again, I had told her I would understand if after 2 cycles she was done. And her mom was like, why would she be done? And so we get this, and it's amazing, and we're excited about it because, based on the numbers that we froze, I was like, Asia, at least one baby I think we'll get from this in the future. And we're going to work on our sperm factor and stuff in the meantime. And we formulate a plan about that too. And you go off, but you stay in contact with us. You stay in contact as you go through your surgery. I think they discovered you didn't need the level of hardcore chemo that they first thought after your surgery was completed, which was exciting news. But you were being covered and followed really closely, and getting back to the life where you're rebuilding your finances and all that. So tell us about that and that journey post this time.
Post retrieval. So I went into my surgery. They ended up removing just my right ovary and my right fallopian tube. Everything else, there was a small cyst that they tested that was also cancerous that they removed. They were able to remove it off of my left ovary, which was nice because we were able to maintain that. And then I prepped for getting started with chemo. We had made my port appointment to get the port placed. And then 2 days before my port was supposed to be placed, Dr. Fleury called me and she goes, I have this crazy idea and you can say no, but that, I just have to tell you. And I said, what's going on? And she said, because I was at Hopkins, I still have people there that I know, and I would love to send your samples off for them to test it because they have, state-of-the-art things that we necessarily don't have here in Nevada.
Yeah, we didn't have that. And we had talked about that, her and I, which was, how about we send it to Hopkins Tumor Board? Let's contact our GYN colleagues that we know there and have them review her case as an outside consult, which we're sharing this here because for people who are listening, this is something that's available to you, but sometimes not even your own physicians know this. We know it because we trained at Johns Hopkins and are aware of this service that you can get a second opinion via sending the pathology samples. And my patients who have recurrent pregnancy loss and certain unique things know we do that as well. But, that was life-changing for you, Asia.
Yes.
Go ahead and share this. But I want people who are listening, no matter where you are in the world, to know these are options. So she didn't go to Johns Hopkins for surgery. She didn't go there for a consult, but what was done was her specimen were sent, the pathology specimen were sent to Johns Hopkins for a second opinion through their special GYN pathology division, because they have a very big GYN pathology division that's incredible. That also then has a special meeting with other multidisciplinary specialists who can review and also weigh in. So go ahead.
Yes. So they had run the tests, and like I said, this was 2 days before I was supposed to get my port placed. And I remember I was going into a doctor's, just a checkup with Flurry before my port appointment, and we had kind of been talking about, okay, for the next 4 months, you're going to come in twice a week, get your chemo. And it was a very aggressive plan, but because of what they had found, that's what needed to happen. And I remember a nurse came in and said, hey, you have Hopkins on the phone. You need to come out. And so she said, I'll be right back. And she came back in and she just said, scratch everything I just said. And I was like, what? And she said, all of your cancer cells have been dormant. Like the count is so low that we don't need to do it. And I just remember being like almost frozen in time. Like Aaron was there and he just looked at me and he was so excited, but I was still so lost because 2 minutes ago I was talking about, getting my port placed the next day, going into this aggressive round of chemo. And she said, instead, we're going to check you every month and a half. You're going to come in. We're going to do the full panel of tests. And so I ended up not even having to go through chemotherapy from a complete turnaround.
Which is huge because it meant that the eggs you had in reserve were at least going to continue on their journey without having to be subjected to chemotherapy or radiation, because radiation was a possibility as well. Based on the advanced grade and stage of the cancer on the initial reviews. And so you're now living your life, going in for your routine scheduled follow-ups. We hadn't talked to you about contraception.
Yeah. And no. And what's crazy is, so I went from that and kind of adjusting to life and still checking in with you guys and letting you know what the crazy twists and turns my life was presenting still, even after being with you. And then I went in for my second check, since being all cleared essentially is, what they call it. But in March, and my levels had gone way up and they were like, okay, you may possibly have a relapse. And I just remember feeling so sick, but not the same kind of sick I felt before. And just randomly one morning I was like, I have a pregnancy test in my bathroom, and I'm just for funsies, I'm gonna go take it. And I was pregnant. And this was like nowhere near what I thought ever was going to happen, because I remember the percentage, we were like, because my numbers were so low and all these things, the percentage was very small to possibly get pregnant on my own. And I was quiet. It was like 4 a.m. and I ran off to Walmart to buy a little onesie because I was like, I have to tell Aaron, like, I can't wait. Like, I don't care. And I'm in my pajamas in Walmart looking at all these things, holding still my pregnancy test that I just took, because I've been in such disbelief. I keep having to check it every 5 minutes. Like, am I crazy? And went home and put a little bag together, and Erin broke down and we said, okay, we're going to tell Mom. And she opened it and she was just like, you're lying, because we're going through all of this, and then for it to just happen, we truly say, my daughter's a miracle. And it's crazy. But yeah, so ended up being pregnant and immediately calling you guys and being like, guys, I know this is crazy, but I think there's a baby in here. It's saying plus. And getting in with you like the next day, because we wanted to make sure that first the pregnancy was viable, and then not only that, but getting on whatever medication that I did need, which I ended up needing some progesterone help,
because and it was so amazing, because I think it was helpful that we talked about things to boost sperm. And so it's not surprising to me that 3 months after having that discussion, sperm and egg found each other, because it takes 70 days, right, to improve sperm function and quality. And so Alicia actually was the one who came to my office, and she's like, guess who I just spoke to? And, I said, who? And she said, Asia. And I was like, oh my God, what
Yeah.
happened? Because I thought it was going to be bad news, because I know we had you on this very special observation protocol after Hopkins folks had weighed in. And so and Alicia was like, no, no, no. And she's smiling. And I was like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And she's like, she's pregnant. And I was like, Asia, pregnant?
Yeah.
I was like, on birth control. I was like, was she not on birth control? And Alicia was like, no, I've just been observing her. And I said, well, she needs to come in right away. Let's get her in. And I know Alicia coordinated all that with you. And yes, I wanted to do the ultrasound, one, to make sure the baby was in the right place. But I desperately wanted to see what was going on with your progesterone levels, because I knew you had recently had surgery on that one ovary and so forth. But I also wanted to make sure there wasn't anything scary looking on the ovary.
Yes.
And so, we bring you in, I do your ultrasound myself, all that stuff. I reach out to Dr. Fleury and she writes back, what?
Yeah.
Really? And I was like, yeah, she's pregnant. And there's a whole baby in there with a nice, strong heartbeat. And so I think that was just like the icing on this cake, because again, there seems to be something quite divine in your story and every step of the way. And so you go on to have a baby. What was that like, being pregnant and recognizing that your surveillance was still technically supposed to be going on and all that stuff? What was that like for you?
So it was such, a blessing to be able to be monitored for the first 12 weeks, because most people, you don't go see your gynecologist until you hit that 12-week mark, and then you go in for all the checks. But being monitored, at your clinic, and then, gradually being kind of let off, to go to see just a regular. I remember just being like, no, just keep me forever. Like, I'm so scared.
You can't make exceptions. You can't deliver me.
Yeah. I know. I was like, I'll just pull some strings. Like, it'll happen. But it was crazy, because not only did we find out that the pregnancy was viable, but my due date was December 15th. And that is exactly the day, a year from when I got my ovary removed. And I remember us looking at each other like, what? December 15th? Like, what are the odds? Like you said, definitely divine the whole way through, because there's just, the coincidences were just too many.
Oh my gosh, just amazing. Like, when I saw your due date, I was like, let me just recalculate. And I was like, oh my God, this is literally her surgery day. And so tell us about your process to delivery and meeting this amazing little stylish princess that you have.
Yes. So I had a daughter, obviously, and her name is Rain. And we decided, my mother's name is Lorraine, but we also said she is our raindrop after a long drought of health, so she definitely lives up to her name. She is sassy and opinionated and smart and hilarious. And I love bringing her in. Like, I brought her in soon after she was born, so that, you guys could meet her. And I just remember, even now to this day, my first egg retrieval, I remember seeing the needle. And I remember you telling me, if your kids ever act up, you bring them back here and I show them this needle that your mother went through multiple times to have you. And I still tell her, I'm like, we're going to go see Auntie Cindy and she's going to show you the needle if you don't, get it together.
And,
but
I think that
seeing her.
You're breaking up again. But
I
know seeing her for you guys must be something amazing, because for me, I'm always stunned when I see photos. Like, you had a photo of her at the beach with sunglasses on. And I was like, who is this little lady? She's got so much personality, but it's been beautiful to watch. And along the way, you've also made some career transitions.
Yes. So now I'm now I am a esthetician, and I'm actually looking into possibly doing oncology esthetician work. And it has always been a dream of mine, because my team was so amazing, from Dr. Fleury to you guys to even my gynecologist, Dr. Skinner, here in town. You guys all worked so harmoniously together to make sure that basically my circle, came full round, my whole story, and that there was never this hiccup in between transitions to where I felt like I had to explain myself once again, because I had been to other doctors who were like, wait, what? Are you sure that these tests? I'm like, no, I lived through it. Like, this legit happened. That I've always wanted to give back in some fashion, because not everybody gets that opportunity to have a team so well integrated, and just caring and understanding. And so I'm so excited to go on that journey next year, and kind of be an advocate for that, but not only that, but an ally, because I understand what it's like to go through mentally, emotionally, financially through that journey, and just want a day to feel normal, because I felt like I craved that so much in my journey. Is
Indeed.
You forget that people just kind of start talking to you like, your life is over, essentially. They're like, oh, I just don't know how strong, you're just so strong, and I would, be on the floor, which at the same time is comforting, but also it makes you rethink, like, am I being too strong? Like, am I not taking this seriously enough? Am I really going to die? These things that you think about, or is any of this worth it, depending on how, everything goes. So yeah, I made the transition, and now I own my own business, and I love it. And I love having amazing entrepreneurs like yourself to look up to. I'm like, if I can just be a slightest bit like, Dr. Cindy Duke, I'm like, I've accomplished everything in life then, if I make it to that.
You are. When you reached out to me and told me that you were completing the aesthetics training and that you'd love to treat the office, and I was like, Asia, we're going to pay you. You don't have to treat the office. We're going to come and we're going to pay. And you're growing leaps and bounds. And I'm going to have you tell people all about your business and how they can find you. Now, we do have some questions for you both here on Instagram and coming in from across social media. And I see one here from Dr. Tusa Karosh on YouTube. And she says, I've heard some women get pregnant naturally after egg harvest. And indeed, there was a lovely paper actually published this year showing that within 6 months of having had ovarian stimulation, like for IVF, and in Asia's case, she had 3 rounds of stimulation within a matter of about 6 weeks, that you can have that. And so, yes, indeed, you sort of wake up the ovaries and really give them that kickstart. And again, it's not entirely surprising that within 90 days of her last egg retrieval, there she is with this just miraculous raindrop, as she calls it. And also we talked about other things to boost fertility, making lifestyle changes, which you embarked on as well. You made some big lifestyle changes, Asia. Looks like you froze again, but when you're back, I'd love for her to tell you guys some of the things she embarked on her personal journey, as she made lifestyle adjustments, and husband made lifestyle adjustments as well, which, and of course she's continued her surveillance. So we'll talk about that too when she's back. Asia, if you need to, feel free to exit and just click on that link and come back in to refresh. But I feel like I hear you in the background, but you're totally frozen. And so tell us how you're do you want to exit and come back? Let's see if your video will come back then.
Can you see me now?
No, I hear you. You sound really good.
Okay, let me leave and I'll come right back.
Okay. And so one of the really cool things is, and of course we have more questions, but it's how she's managed to balance this all and adjust it as she's going through, and, continue her surveillance and all that stuff, as they continue to grow in leaps and bounds. And we should ask if they, has husband gotten a new truck yet, Erin? So we'll see soon. But thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you so much, Taylor, for all your amazing and supportive comments for Asia. And Asia is back. So here she is. There you are.
Yes.
And so, Taylor is here. She's sent some really supportive comments for you. So I wanted to make sure you saw them. And she's saying Rain is the most beautiful baby girl. I could not agree more. And
Taylor is a fellow esthetician, and she is one of my girls. And, she's out in Oregon. So
I love it. I love it. And Dr. Falaki Taylor on YouTube is saying, I love so many miracles. I was on IG Live and just realized you're on YouTube. Yes, I'm on YouTube, guys. So follow me there, subscribe. And, it's amazing. So Alicia, who you know very well, has a question for you, which is, what is the role of an esthetician in oncology, which you have a major role as an oncological esthetician. So tell us a little more, introduce the audience to what that
Yeah.
is.
So one of the biggest roles is to help work with oncologists to not only identify some skin cancers, but also help combat some of the side effects that happen with radiology and chemotherapy in the skin. Also with post-op, with making sure things heal properly. Also, when you get into other realms of it, areola tattooing for breast cancer survivors can happen with an oncology esthetician. Honestly, it's endless, the things that you can do when you partner with an oncologist to help be an ally, not only for that doctor but for the patient as well.
Indeed. And, again, aesthetics is such a key role to human existence and survival that it does so much for someone's self-esteem as they go through their journey, and that consideration of their appearance or their ability, with many cancer therapies, including chemotherapy and radiation, the skin changes, its sensitivity to different products changes, etc. So you do need to have specialists, specialized estheticians who can do all that, the ones who can do all the amazing tattooing, whether it be the areola stuff, whether it be, creating things like eyebrows, etc. It's so necessary. And so I personally think, Asia, that is going to be incredible. If you chose to pursue that, you're going to do incredibly well. I already know it, and I know the audience is excited.
Yes, I'm so excited. And it's just it's an untapped market right now, especially because not only with it being so new, like right now, like the beginning of when it started to fully blossom was 2014. And, it's still underneath that very new, a lot of people don't know about it, and that there is those people that you can reach out to, like you said, whether it's eyebrows or even treating the scalp when you start to get your wigs and certain things like that you don't really think about, that you could have somebody to help you.
Yes. And, we see all sorts of changes. We see brittle nails. We see people whose toenails fall off. They need incredible support services beyond the traditional healthcare team of the physician, the nurse practitioner, PA, and nurses. You need a massive team of support and complementary alternative therapies. Even though I don't like saying alternative, I really think they're complementary. So whether it be acupuncture, nutritional things. And that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about your journey, because you certainly, and you've been very open also on your account, sharing some of your lifestyle adjustments that you made following your diagnosis and ultimately the birth of your daughter, which tell the audience how old she is now.
She will be 3 on December 10th. So she's coming up to her 3-nager years. And I can definitely say they're in full swing. But yeah, so when I was cleared to start doing some things different after my last surgery, even while we were doing our egg retrievals, I had started working out more. I had actually adopted a lot of like CrossFit into my routine. I loved like weightlifting because I felt like everything around me made me not feel strong, because there was this, cancer in me that was eating away at my life. And weightlifting for me changed that. And I was like, well, I'm still strong. I can still do these things. And this is my body. And thankfully, my husband's best friend, he was our trainer, and he modified so many things to help me get to that point, because all of the medications and just recovering from surgery, having to be extra careful. But not only that, but nutrition was a huge thing that changed for us. To not only promote healing and, lack of inflammation, bringing that inflammation down in the body, as well. Water intake, just everything kind of shifted for us. And we had to look at things with a different perspective, whether it was just meals that we were eating and the amount of physical activity, whether it was walking, and just understanding my levels, making sure blood sugar was good and blood pressure and all those things. And those are things that were continued to be monitored through my pregnancy, especially because, your body just doesn't heal. Just because my incisions healed on the outside doesn't mean my internal, incisions were healing as fast. And I had to kind of learn that the hard way a little bit and get a little scolded to be calmed down a little bit, through a healing process. But yeah, it completely changed the way I looked at my health. And I continue to do those things because I truly think that with the combination of, being able to jumpstart my ovaries through our rounds and changing my lifestyle habits is what got Rain here today.
Yes,
So
I think so. I firmly think so. And I think, one of the amazing stories of your resilience and your journey is that you've just kept striving forward in leaps and bounds as you make these journeys. Now, someone here is messaging asking, this is a DM, is she planning to have more children? And what about the eggs that she froze?
Yeah, like I say, I'm an open book. So yeah, we do plan to have at least one more. We've also, with everything that we went through, it definitely changed our mindset. And if for some reason a second baby isn't in our future, we're just extremely happy that we have Rain. And we joke all the time and say that she has like 5 kids in her. So it's okay if we only have the one. But yeah, we would love another baby. And yeah, we've maintained our eggs for a long time. We actually just recently released them and decided to go without freezing, just because one of the things is financially, it does cost money. A lot of people don't realize that I still paid every year to make sure that they stayed. We always call them our ice age
babies on ice. Yes. We lost her again, but she'll be back. But indeed, and I think that's one of the things, whether we're talking about cancer or social egg freezing, which is those choosing to freeze eggs for social reasons, is freezing your eggs doesn't mean you have to use them in the future, but it's so that you preserve that option until you've made your decision. And that's the thing in the world of oncofertility or cancer treatments that we talk about. But, it's certainly one way to have that option open so that you can then decide. And so when Asia comes back, we'll continue that conversation. But if you're joining us, welcome, welcome. I'm Dr. Cindy Duke. I'm a board certified OBGYN reproductive endocrine infertility subspecialist. I'm the medical director and founder of the Nevada Fertility Institute, which is a full service reproductive health center here in Las Vegas, Nevada. And we are celebrating our 5 years of being open in Las Vegas. And as part of that, we are going to be doing interviews with some of our past patients who have really amazing stories. And every patient really has amazing stories, but the ones who are joining us are the ones who are willing to share publicly their journey. And Asia is one of them and has been so incredibly helpful to just how she shares her story and what she's willing to give back as part of this. Now, in terms of your routine surveillance, because of your history, Asia, what's that been like for you?
It's honestly been amazing. So for the first year, I still went every 6 weeks. That was the plan we kind of carved out. After the first year, I still had a couple cysts that were popping up. And because it wasn't exactly ideal of what we wanted, like necessarily a clean bill of health, we maintained this every 6 weeks up until the 2-year mark. And then we switched to 3 months. And now I'm happily at every 6 months, which was huge celebration when we were able to say, okay, see you in 6 months.
Yes.
And have maintained great ovarian health, great uterine health, and just working together to monitor. And even now, if something comes up or I feel a certain way, I message, Dr. Fleury's team, and I'm able to get in super soon. Aaron just jumped on. Hi, hun. Yes, he's like, yeah, so he's there. But yeah, so just making sure that constant communication is there, whether it's needing to get in for an ultrasound or blood work. And I know the tricky thing is with blood work that a lot of people don't realize is because I still have an ovary and because ovarian cancer is a hormonal cancer, my spikes, sometimes are just because I'm ovulating, so sometimes we had to switch from doing blood work to just doing ultrasounds because basically the ovary would spike, and it's not really cancer, but it's just because I have ovarian, because most of the time, you go and take both when you're older, to avoid that confusion. That's why I had to be monitored so closely, because we weren't going to take that route and remove both.
Indeed. And I think it's so important that we share that, because I think many people would think, oh, they gave her a clean bill of health, told her no chemo. That's where that ends. But in our younger patients, where we are doing as much as we can to preserve fertility, it's a fine balance, which is we do all that, but we also monitor very closely, and we space things out so that they can have a life and not feel tethered to the clinic and the constant need to come see the GYN oncologist or their oncologist. But we also want to make sure we're staying on top of their situation. And so someone here we have a couple questions from Instagram. So one question for you, Asia, was what were some of those non-specific symptoms, which of course is one of the hallmarks of ovarian cancer, whether you're young as you were 21 or the folks who are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, that's also what makes ovarian cancer so tricky, is its symptoms are very non-specific. So I know at the time you didn't know there were symptoms, but in looking back, you shared, for example, that you had this intense cramps, and they tended to be on one side at the time, but you didn't associate that with anything until after the diagnosis. But were you having any of the other symptoms, the nausea, the bloating, the weird bloating after eating, or any of that stuff, or unexplained bloating?
Yeah, so I definitely had the bloating and the fatigue anytime around my cycle. And the thing is, a lot of people say, they had inconsistent cycles, but for me, my cycles were on it every month. I could tell you the exact day I was going to start, but the intense bleeding and the clots that happened, I just thought everybody had, and come to find out, no, not many people have those kind of things. But the bloating after eating was definitely an issue, as well as like the anemia, like kind of like the faux symptoms of like being cold all the time. And a lot of the things that were explained to me was like, it's a terrible period. Like those are a lot of the symptoms that come with ovarian cancer, and you just wouldn't know. Like for a long time, I thought maybe I had a gluten intolerance because of the bloating, or I had a dairy intolerance. But yeah, looking back now I eat certain things that I ate back then that I'm completely fine, but it was because I had my undiagnosed issue that all these things were happening. And even though it was devastating to find out, at the same time, it felt good to have an answer, because I just thought I was stuck with this for the rest of my life. And I was just like, well, this is my, health, and this is just how it's going to be.
Indeed. And, that's the thing about ovarian cancer in particular. It's very nonspecific, and hindsight is 2020, which is after having the cancer removed, suddenly your symptoms went away on their own, as opposed to, yes, because I know right now there are people listening like, but I have heavy periods. I have cramps. Do I have ovarian cancer? And probably not. But they may have fibroids, they may have PCOS, they may have a variety of other things going on. And that's what makes a lot of the things happening within our reproductive system so interesting, and why we encourage people to at least talk to your clinician about what you're feeling. So I don't want anyone taking away from Asia's journey that, oh my God, now I have ovarian cancer. But at the same time, I want you to know that if you have symptoms that aren't going away, they're persisting, get them checked out, get the persistent cysts checked out, etc. But also know that we do have telltale signs that we're looking for on imaging, etc., which is what got them concerned with Asia's ultrasound when she went in, which is they were seeing something that looked very different from the typical ovarian cysts. And that's what led to all those people coming into the room that you recounted at the beginning, and the radiologist coming in and them calling you in the parking lot to say, we need you to go get more done. And so I want to reassure people out there that there are multiple steps in the process that help us tease this apart, not to scare anyone. But at the same time, it's important to know ovarian cancer can happen in someone as young as 21.
Yes.
Yes. So another question we have, someone on Insight saying, with people so young, is the BRCA gene, which is the breast cancer gene, it's BRCA is BRCA, and we call it
Mhm.
BRCA, is it often a factor? And BRCA is one of the genes that could predispose a young person to developing breast cancer, ovarian cancer, but there are other cancers associated with BRCA as well, including melanoma. But the truth is, the majority of young people who develop these cancers also don't have necessarily currently identifiable genetic risk factors. So, Asia, you had your genetic testing done.
Hmm. Yes, I did. And it was nice to be able to know that that was even an option. Um, just because even coming from a family that I knew cancer did run in our family, I wasn't aware that that was something I could get done so early.
Mhm.
I always
Mhm.
thought I had to be in my 40s around that time to even get that checked. And so just having the knowledge that that was an available service to me was huge. And being able
Right.
to see, especially now that I do have Rain, understanding if those genes, those genes are present, and if they're not, to be able to guide her, because now that I have the knowledge, I will definitely make sure that Rain gets checked, and these things, because
Yes.
I went through it so young.
Indeed. And that's the thing also about young people being tested. So, though we didn't find an identifiable cancer causing gene, because Asia got tested so young, whenever new genes are discovered, the testing companies are going to run it against her information and notify her of any updates if a new thing has been identified to explain what happened with her. And so that's one of the keys here. And it's why we always encourage that if you're a member of a family and you have a cancer diagnosis, that you should definitely get tested, genetic cancer screening, and then they can always go back, especially if you're young, if you're under 50 with a diagnosis, because you're now part of a database wherein if new genes are identified that are linked to your cancer, they can go back and update, but also update your clinicians and make outreach to get you aware so you can update your children, etc. Because not only does Asia have years of possible reproduction left, but she has a family and this legacy to inform as they go along. And so it's been incredible. Now, Asia, I know you're a busy woman. It's Saturday, you're at work, you've taken the time after we had to reschedule this week. And so I appreciate your patience and your willingness to reschedule. Alicia has a statement and question for you. So she says,
Mhm.
Asia, my skin has changed a ton after my last two pregnancies. The regimen that has generally worked for my skin since high school doesn't seem to be working anymore. Is that something that you can help with? And how do we schedule with you?
Yes. So unfortunately, those babies are awesome, but sometimes they do change our skin. The old wives' tale is when you're pregnant with a girl, they steal your beauty, and when you're pregnant with a boy, they help you glow. So thankfully, Rain's really cute, and she definitely sucked my beauty away when I was pregnant. So I
Not
would like to say there's definitely there's some truth to that. But yes, that is something I definitely can help with. I am located in Town Square in Look Style Society, and my business is called Superfly Aesthetics. So you can find me at Superfly Aesthetics on Facebook, on Instagram. Instagram is my main page. Also, if you have Vagaro.com, I do have a list of all my services and prices and hours. And I am still accepting new clientele. So yeah, if anybody wants to come down, I'm happy to help and get you on a new regimen that will help you through all life's changes.
Yes. And so for those who maybe just visitors to Vegas, Asia is very close to the strip, very close. They're actually
Yes.
technically just a little, what is that, south of the strip, on the
Hmm.
same Las Vegas Boulevard. So, and it's a fancy place. I can say that because it's also where I go to get my hair done. Asia, I didn't
Yeah.
realize you were there. Are you upstairs?
Yeah, I'm upstairs.
That's why, because I come to Kiara, who's downstairs.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So it's an amazing space, and they have incredible hours, and Asia has amazing hours as well. And you guys do everything in there. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
full service facility, but each person's their own business, which I think is so cool. And it's such
Yes.
a dynamic way to do aesthetics and cosmetology and beauty altogether is they have the space, but then you guys sort of sublease your own units.
Yeah, we even have a barber shop in the back. I'm
Yes.
closer over by the barber areas, and so I've made lots of barber friends, and it's funny. I actually have quite a few male. About 30% of my clientele is male, and so it's nice to see guys taking care of themselves too. You know, it's not only for us ladies to glow, but our guys to do it as well.
Yes, and Alicia is saying it's right by Saks off Fifth. Indeed, it's facing Saks off Fifth. I forget what's alongside it, but the Whole Foods isn't far either. But if you come to Las Vegas, guys, make sure you schedule with Azia as well, because it doesn't matter where you're staying in Vegas. Town Square is a major convening point, and it's fancy. It's nice. The building itself where she's working is fancy. It's nice, and Azia is fancy and nice too. So
thanks.
All around. So Azia, do you want to make any closing statements? And again, I will make sure to share in the comments so that they live on forever your links to Instagram, as well as your other links that you shared there. But definitely, this is an opportunity for you to talk to a very broad audience. The replay of this session is going to be available across Facebook, across YouTube, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And we will certainly promote it as well. But it's also an opportunity for you to reach an audience around the world.
Yeah, my biggest thing is knowing your reproductive health. I was in a, perfect storm, like I said, to where I got to learn a lot about it in such a short amount of time, things that I would have probably never learned if I didn't go through, I went through. So not only reproductive health, but, checking on cancers, whether it's skin cancer or, making sure you're getting those genetic testings, because it's a lot easier to prepare for something if you know about it rather than finding it just happenstance like I did. And I'm grateful for that opportunity, but it's very far and few between that it does end up happening. And not being scared to talk about it. I think a lot of times you feel like a failure because your fertility may not be where it's supposed to be at, quote unquote. But not only for all of our people with ovaries, but those with testes as well. It is important just for you to have that conversation as well, and to not be ashamed, because it is something that all of us should know about, whether you're planning for a family or not, just to be more aware of your body, and normalizing those conversations so that others to make sure with your, those things that you are more aware and more conscious of, what they may be going through.
Indeed. And, for those who are on Instagram, I promise you we will repost the video to IG. So I'm going to cut it up into 2 segments and I'll load it into IG Live so that you can view Azia's entire interview there on IG as well, in replay. And Azia, thank you so much for doing this today. I think, I just think you're amazing. You know that. And I look up to you. I constantly am checking, because I'm like, what's Azia up to? What are they doing? I love the vacation photos and all that. And I am just really excited that you are moving forward, growing your business, taking charge of your own health, your life, and preparing this legacy that you shared so far back then, which was Dr. Duke. It's about legacy for me. And you're doing it, Azia. You're doing it. And I'm so proud of you because you're doing it so well. And cheers to Aaron as well. Cheers to everyone. Aaron is your husband, Azia Milford, and here he is, as always, supporting. And, I think it's also, you're an amazing example of how a young couple can face challenges and face it together and, creatively decide how to move forward with the challenge and rise to every challenge. So thank you. Thank you so much for joining us, Azia. Wishing you the best of the day with the rest. Alicia wants you to know that your skin is glowing.
Thank you.
Indeed. And, members of our own team have gone in to get their services. I'm going to be going in to get my services soon. Do you want to list out some of your services, Azia, before we leave? What do you do?
Yeah, so I do facials, I do waxing, lash lifts, but skincare is my biggest part in my business. And I love doing facials, not only giving you that comfort and the relaxation that we all love and crave, but also results based. So getting you to your ideal skin health, because our skin is the largest organ on our body and it's the first thing people see. So let's, make sure it's all healthy.
Thank you, Erin. Sending love and just lots of hugs to you too. And tell Miss Rain I said hi, give her a hug for me. And so Asia, I'll be coming in, and certainly guys, Asia is versed in taking care of all skin types, all ethnic backgrounds.
Yes.
And she is very, very sensitive to everybody's needs. And so again, if you're coming into Vegas, I know you could schedule a spa date at those big casinos, but you're going to get even more personalized care if you go to Asia. And I'm telling you, I know the facility she's at. It's incredible because that's where I go to get my hair done as well. Yeah. So awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, Asia, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure, and enjoy the rest of your day. And I know we'll be checking in soon.
Yes, of course.
Bye.
Bye.
Alrighty, guys. Well, we're going to wrap up. This has been Live with me, Dr. Cindy, and we have been talking with Asia. I have a lot more cool things coming up. We have Hillary Kennedy, who's another one of our patients. She's going to talk about her journey to single mommyhood by choice. Look out for that. It's coming up in the next few days. We have a journey with one of our patients who's a single dad by choice. I think that's a conversation that many people aren't aware of. And so we'll explore that with him. And we also have another encore fertility story, which is we'll talk to someone who was diagnosed with breast cancer, had to undergo all the treatments, including mastectomy. And ultimately, we did the testing, found the BRCA gene, tested embryos, and now she has her baby. And so who won't at least have to worry about the BRCA gene causing her problems in her lifetime. And so we'll have a lot of cool things coming up as part of this 5-year anniversary conversation. I encourage you to tune in to the Nevada Fertility Institute's IG page, where we're running some giveaways. So we have gift cards that are happening. We have different cool gifts that we're giving away, including some services that you can access, but we also have movie tickets giving away. Isn't that cool? And so check it out. And it's going to be a wonderful time. So until next time, signing out to you here on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And I'll then go just wrap up with our IG family as well. So thank you, everyone. It's been an incredible, incredible opportunity to share Asia with you guys and to let you know that so much is possible if you only believe. So signing out. Take care, everybody. Bye.